my mom.
That's right.
Worked
Yeah.
in some gas station.
Okay.
So we should bring that. It goes in the I don't like it in the freezer. I love it. I can't.
Itself.
No.
Okay.
But then, you know, something very.
That's true.
Maybe, I'm not gonna say no to that right away.
Are you-
I think about that.
Twelve cents.
Especially here.
You know, you're fresh, you can tell the difference. Been there for 13 years, it's like.
Yeah, I was told to throw them out after a year, they're not stood anymore.
On artists? Yeah,
Yeah, yourself,
I
period.
think we have a quorum here, and I think it's, with Joe's absence, I think it's my show.
Not sure what.
yeah, so actually.
And you can get them in little.
Good mark.
Little.
Yeah, my iPhone says 9:59, it says 10:02.
A station.
And we have, do have a new member. That, I didn't supplement,
And.
So,
Different cards. What is that, dude, this phone's over something.
Oh, that's, wait,
You know that packet?
Yeah.
Yes.
You have it, I'm like, was it in the report? Hi, how are you? Good. See Judy's taking notes again.
you may start down there.
Yes, that is online. You're online? Yeah.
I just.
Name up there.
So I know.
We'll be running the meeting today with Joe's absence. Welcome, everybody, to the April 15th tax day meeting of the Capital District Regional Planning Commission. We'd like to introduce a new member, Mark.
Sure. Dan Casal, new representative from Rensselaer County. I apologize to you, Mr. Casal. I did not update our letterhead to reflect your membership, but I'm happy to know that Amy was on the ball to get you a 10 card.
I got this right here.
Letterhead, just not,
Oh, that's fine, that's fine. That'd be there.
Who's off?
Jackie.
Jackie Stallone. You want to talk a little bit about your background?
Well, my background is 20+ years in the private industry, working for Callahan Industries, Clement Latham Concrete Division, being the supervisor of the sales and quality control. We were probably the biggest one at the time in upstate New York. Now concrete part shrunk, that's why I left. And we're a worldwide company. Then one day I got into government. I worked as a district director for Senator Marshawn, then a district director for Senator Jordan, and now I'm a district director for Senator Ashby. County legislator, serving on chairman of a few boards, veterans and youth and education, environment. And I also serve on several outside board community boards, CEO, Hudson Valley Board, Hudson Foundation Board, past boards, think of a few, hold them prepared, real. I don't know how many boards I'm on, I'm a handful of boards and I've been on a handful of past boards.
Well, the person you're
I
sitting
went to
next
Hudson
to.
Valley, I got my degree from Youth College, Syracuse University,
Mhm.
a bachelor's. Good friends with Wayne Gendron and Judy Bresler. Well, friends, Wayne's I'm a board with me now, and Judy's a longtime friend of mine.
Great. Well, welcome to the commission. Looking forward to working with you, and I need to set up a time where we can get together for a lunch or coffee and.
Sure, absolutely.
Jasmine Higgins, the person sitting next to you, did point out a lot of our board members, some people consider them professional board members because they serve on so many boards. So you're in good.
Yeah, I just got the Hunter Valley board. I was on the parking lot on a call and I says, I gotta get going here. Well, that's fine. It keeps me going, keeps me thinking.
Great.
So I enjoyed it.
And we also appreciated Senator Ashby's co-sponsorship of the bill a couple sessions ago that opened up eligibility for regional planning commissions. It's important to have that bipartisan support. I get
Hope they'll be
that.
able to help out as district director, help out with anything they can do on the county level, and then on state level.
Great. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, so I think today we're gonna start with a presentation by Madison on the new normal transportation in the capital region.
So this is a part of our ongoing work funded through the Capital Region Transportation Council.
And our friend Mike Stanwell too. I didn't know he was up there. The guy, he's up there on that full screen.
I need to share the screen. Folks online.
We're good, don't worry.
Block your
Yeah.
way. Yes.
I think it is today. At least it's freezing.
Can folks online see the screen? All right, thumbs up from Mike.
Alright,
Yep.
good, Mark?
Yep.
All right, so today I will be presenting on an unpublished report, which should be published by the end of the week, taking a look at transportation trends in the capital region, specifically looking at pre-COVID and post-COVID ridership amongst multiple modes like air, rail, bus, and some micromobility. In the report, it kind of digs deeper in a more granular level, taking a look at service level changes, financial changes, as well as demographic and housing changes as it relates to riders themselves. But today we'll just be focusing on ridership. All right, the different modes that are looked on at in this report are CDTA, Amtrak, and Albany International Airport. CDTA is further broken out into different sub-modes, the first being motor bus, which includes local fixed route service and CDTA's bus rapid transit lines. This is the core of the system and carries majority of riders, particularly essential workers and transit-dependent populations. The next sub-mode is the commuter bus, refers to longer distance peak hour services like the Northway Express, which connects Saratoga Springs to the city of Albany. Also demand response, which provides pre-scheduled shared ride service for seniors and individuals with disabilities who require ADA accessible transportation. Also housed underneath CDTA is the CDPHP bike share program, which we'll also be taking a look at today. Just a few key terms here. When I talk about pre-pandemic, I'm referring to 2019 or pre-2019 data. I'll be referring to trips and ridership interchangeably, and this is the total of number of unlinked passenger boardings, meaning each time a passenger boards a vehicle, it is counted as one trip regardless of transfers. And I'll be talking about recovery or the return of ridership to pre-pandemic benchmarks, typically measured in the number of trips. As you remember, pandemic shocked a lot of things. It shocked the transportation system, and ridership decreased in 2020 across all modes of transportation. Couple of things that were implemented among the multiple agencies were temporarily suspending fares, that's specific to CDTA, implementing rear door boarding to limit exposure of both passengers and drivers, functioning at limited capacity to support social distancing, formation of COVID-19 task force, introducing mask mandates and quarantine periods, that's particularly for Albany International Airport, as well as enhanced cleaning protocols. It also changed the way we work and learn, as there was a big transfer to hybrid and remote learning and working. According to the most recent census information, you see a jump of about 10% of the share of workers over the age of 16 that are working from home. We can see this is the aggregate number of riderships across all modes of transportation, and you can see there the decrease in ridership between 2019 and 2020. At about a 35% decrease. Recovery took a couple of years, and it wasn't until 2024 that the total system recovered to pre-pandemic levels. And you can see in the most recent available data, there is a slight decrease in ridership, and that is attributed to CDTA, which had a slight decrease between the two periods. And in the report, there's kind of a proxy to service levels called VRM, or vehicle revenue miles. And CDTA did experience a decrease of about 4% in VRM between those two periods, and that just contributed to consolidation of routes, or kind of realigning routes. Now we're gonna dig a little bit deeper. This is CDT, just specific CDTA ridership for all the modes. So that's your commuter, your motor, and your demand response. Annual ridership decreased by about 29% between 2019 and 2020 annually, and recovered in 2023. In 2025, ridership was about 18.2 million passengers. Further broken out into those three submodes, the top right, you can see motor bus, which is the largest ridership share. It recovered quickly and exceeded 2019 levels by 2023. Commuter bus, the bottom left, had the steepest decline between 2019 and 2020 at about 71%, and recovery still remains incomplete. In 2025, it's about 61% of pre-pandemic levels. This type of submode experienced limited and low ridership prior to the pandemic, so this is likely just continuing that trend. And demand response had the fastest rebound and exceeded pre-pandemic ridership by 2022. In 2024, there was significant expansion to the demand response services like Flex Plus, so that could just be attributed to the higher utilization.
Can you just define demand response? I know you just said Flex Plus, but all the kinds.
I don't know the list off the top of my head.
Okay. So it's like the buses you can order, basically, is demand response.
Yeah, those who need accessible transportation.
And as are those peaks in the motor bus, is that related to like seasonality and when students are in session?
Yes, if you hover over Mark, you can see the actual month.
Schools in session, and then it seems to slow up towards the holiday season.
Yeah,
It seems to be dips in the winter and
Yeah.
dips in the summer, so that would align with school.
so this is looking at CDTA's bike share program. Ridership dipped in 2020, like you've seen. But as the system expanded, ridership increased between 2019 and 2025. There was a jump from 340 to 600 bikes, as well as a jump from 75 stations in 2019 to 125 stations in 2025. And ridership in 2025 has exceeded 100,000. Transitioning to Amtrak, ridership decreased between 2019 and 2020 by 41%, but didn't experience its low until 2021, just prolonged impacts of travel, tourism, work. System recovered in 2023 and 2024, but didn't reach those pre-pandemic levels until 2024 with 981,000 riders. In 2025, annual ridership is over 1 million, and you can kind of see here the red is the Albany Rensselaer station in the city, and it accounts for about 80 to 95% of all riders in the capital region.
It's I think it's the 8th busiest station in the nation in Albany. One of the things that I was questioning about the data in terms of recovery of Amtrak was the level of use of state workers. Because when I was at the state, I was on the Amtrak going down from meetings to the city. And I wonder if either remote work or changes in remote meetings changed the ridership of the state workforce. I imagine that was a significant pre-pandemic source of riders, but we weren't able to get that data from the state.
As for Albany International Airport, air passenger traffic dropped by 66% and flights down by 44% between 2019 and 2020. That lowest point there is April of 2020. There was a quick but incomplete recovery in 2021. Ridership increased by 90% during that period. And then there was a steady recovery through 2024, but it wasn't until 2025 that Albany International Airport exceeded pre-pandemic levels. And it's actually the most ridership in the airport's history at over 3 million air passenger trips. Just quickly wrapping up here, bringing it back to the regional level. There was 19.5 million trips taken in 2019. In 2025, we see 22.5 million trips. Recoveries differed between the different modes of transportation. CDTA experienced recovery in 2023, Amtrak in 2024, and Albany International Airport in 2025. Although ridership took a few years for the system to recover, all modes did recover to pre-pandemic levels. And with, transitions to hybrid work environments, e-commerce, things like that, it'll be important to continue to monitor these trends in the capital region.
Thanks, Madison. Great presentation. One observation about changes in air travel is post-pandemic structural changes in passenger air, moving towards a more hub and spoke model, relying on larger airplanes. And we've really seen that impacting the increase in I say ridership, but flights, enplanements, as they say, from coming out of Albany International. While there may be the same number of planes, the planes are larger and there are more seats. And those planes may be going to the major hubs rather than doing the direct flights. While we all love the direct flights to Nashville, a lot of the flights that we get out of Albany International are going to Charlotte, a lot of the major hubs. And that's strategic among the airlines because they can make more money doing it that way. But great presentation. Any questions for Matt?
As to that point, I gotta leave a little early. I've got a flight myself. And it's, Albany to O'Hare in Chicago, and then I'm guessing that 85% of that flight's not stopping in Chicago, they're connecting, so.
Right. And, why do we care about this stuff? Is that whether it's people who ride the bus or people who fly planes, it all underpins our regional economy. All the service workers that have to take the bus, people coming in, leaving, the airports all underpin our regional economy. So it's important for us to take a look at these trends.
I have a general question, about the bus on demand. How do we get the word out to people in the outlying communities that even exists? I'm thinking, people like in Ossingville, Sam Lake, other outlying areas in Rensselaer County, I don't think they're aware that they can just get a bus or call for a bus. Someone had mentioned to me not too long ago about Troy Farmers Market, it's gonna be open, and they said, "Oh, I'd love to go down, but there's no place to park. It's too bad we couldn't take a bus." Now that wouldn't be bus on demand, but I'm thinking maybe they have to get to a doctor's office or whatever, and they're living in Grafton or whatever. They don't know about this. How do we get the word out to these people that there is a service?
It is a challenge. So the folks down the hall at the MPO have a committee that's focused on transportation for older citizens and disabled citizens. And the way we choose to provide the service as a region is bizarre. It relies on a combination of county-funded programs, of CDTA, of locally funded transportation programs. So the town of Clifton Park, the town of Half Moon, Malta, they may have their own senior transportation system. The county may have their own transportation system. This goes true for any county.
Well, I know they did, but I think it was maxed out a few years ago. Someone said they have to be on a wait list for like 6 weeks to get to a doctor's appointment.
So the main challenge of the system is really a customer service challenge, getting to who I need to contact. Because there's so many different organizations and there's not one entry point to the system, and that's the underlying challenge. But that committee down the hall is working on it, and I'll be happy to share all the resources they have for senior transportation. We can all share it out to our.
What that triggers also is this whole notion of building out the micro mobility hubs. Right, so I'm involved in a project in Lansingburg, for instance, that's mixed use. And very integral to it, it's on the plus route and to establish a micro mobility up there. So that
Yeah,
notion,
right.
so maybe the response would be perhaps the folks running the farmer's market would set up a shuttle from a remote, more of a remote market.
Yeah, cause I'm looking, older people would love to take advantage of that, you know, they're
Yeah.
not, some of them are not driving or they're apprehensive to go and park in a designated place where there's very few parking spots and, you know, they could really use something like that to get out into the communities and just, but I don't believe they're aware, and I could be wrong. I don't go to the senior citizen centers, maybe they pass the word out there, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, maybe.
You're not eligible.
Probably young, you know, but.
Well, and
It's pretty hard to believe, but yeah.
it brings up other issues that I'll talk about later in the context of a grant application. And that's a lot of seniors are aging in place in areas that don't facilitate a continued quality of life after they can't drive, right? And we're also building senior housing, perhaps in places that are not connected to the transit system.
Exactly.
Both of those issues are gonna be compounded by the growth in our senior population over the next 20, 30 years. So, and I'll talk about this later, we need to start thinking regionally about these.
Again, this could be a whole different topic, but you know, I know where I live, I'm not alone. You know, and hearing this from older people saying they just can't get out and about. But,
And
and
there's
we
also-
digress and I apologize.
That's okay, I like talking about planning. There's also a psychological barrier in terms of perception of lack of parking. So, you know, if you are somebody who's going to Walmart, and you gotta park at the back of the parking lot and then
Right.
walk to get a container of milk to the back of the store.
Yeah,
I mean, that's like a quarter mile,
yeah,
you know? And parking a quarter mile away from an activity in the city is a different mentally. People think
Sure.
about that differently.
sure.
Anyway,
Concerns is the thing about safety as well, right? If you have to walk long distance from where you're going, so that's a part of it as well.
right. Well, thank you, Madison. Well done. We'll be issuing a press release when we send out the report.
Thank you.
Inspired me to look at my Navigator app again for CDTA. So it is difficult to navigate all the different apps and services. You know, someone who helps run a parking network in downtown Schenectady, it's technology is a blessing, but it's also difficult, especially if you're not using it every day. Okay, thank you. And back to the agenda items. Looks like we're going to be approving the January 21st meeting minutes. Are there any
There-
questions?
There is a correction to the minutes.
Okay,
I inadvertently left Craig Warner out of the attendees. So when the motion is approved, it'll be with corrections that I will change.
I have a motion for the
You want me
corrected.
to either. Well, I do them the same time, you know. Yeah, kind
I'll move to accept the corrected minutes.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Now move on to the financial statements. Mark?
Revenues are underperforming par, but that's just due to the fact that our quarter one grant revenues have yet to be booked. Expenses are on track for tracking to par. We had about $300,000 cash in the bank and about $350,000 in receivables. $131,000 of which is from the Department of State, who still owes us for 3 years of grant work on our CSO program. Pre-audit financial statements. We're prepared to proceed with our 2025 audit. Revenues were at almost 100% and expenses were at 90%. The underperformance on the expense side was because we over budgeted expenses for consultant services, which we didn't wind up using. The projected contribution to the fund balance at year end on the pre-audit financials is set at $144,000. However, that will be adjusted to account for our proportionate share of our obligation to the New York State Retirement System, which is calculated as part of our audit, and our obligations to pay for our staff's compensated absences, which is a long-term liability. So those last year, for example, it reduced our contribution by about $30,000. But we are in a good position in terms of our fund balance versus our operations expenses.
The audit's actually starting next week.
Mark, do you have a goal for fund balance, just so that we're
The standard goal is 25% of operating expenses, so we're meeting that expectation. Our operating expense is about 1.2, 1.3 million. And we have a healthy cash reserve, and that is going to allow us, and I'll talk about it as we talk about other programs. To have enough of a base to be able to spend money and wait for reimbursements. And that's really the key to our operations.
Your CSO grants, you said you're 3 years behind,
Yes,
so the reimbursements have been submitted.
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
No, yeah.
But it's a lot of money.
Yes, they've been submitted. It's exceedingly complicated. It's a Sisyphean task to get money out of the Department of State. And suffice it to say, those bills have been submitted, but now they're being held up by our latest budget modification request. Which is $13,000. And it's holding up our $131,000 reimbursement. So we're just working through it.
Okay.
We'll get the money.
sometimes you have to work a little bit for it.
You do, you have to work.
Any other questions on the financial statements? And we have a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Right. Those are the formal board actions. We're gonna move on to some other items. Mark, would you like to discuss the Capital Region Timber Bridge initiative?
Sure. So we are a designated local development district for the Northern Border Regional Commission. This is a repeat for things I say every time, but it's good to have a reminder for the board. Northern Border Regional Commission, Federal Commission in our area covers Schenectady, Rensselaer, and Saratoga counties, focuses on economic development projects and certain infrastructure projects, can fund roadway infrastructure, pre-development infrastructure, energy infrastructure, water and sewer infrastructure. And really the goal, being a Northern Border Regional Commission, is to provide enhanced economic development opportunities related to industries either that are fading in those industries, in those areas, or support industries in those areas like timber. So this Timber for Transit program is a program that they established to enhance or support or be a catalyst for the timber industry. And people don't think about how timber can be used for construction projects like bridges. But the technology in laminated timber and other technologies have really made timber a viable option for certain infrastructure projects, including bridges. So we were inspired by this project because we helped the town of Sand Lake submit an application to construct a timber bridge to replace one of their bridges. And that was a one-off, but I thought, well, we should find all the bridges that would be suitable to be replaced by wooden bridges in the region. So partnering with the folks down the hall, they have a list of the bridges and the conditions of all the bridges on the local road system in the region. And I reached out to DOT and said, can you give me $60,000 to match this study? And they said yes. So we put together a grant application that will produce concept level designs for about 20 bridges in the region that would be suitable to be replaced by timber structures. And it would also provide 2 grant-ready engineering packages for a bridge that would be ready to apply for construction. One of the underprescribed grant programs that's administered by our State Department of Transportation is the it's not rural bridge, there's so many acronyms. It's not bridge, there's Bridge New York, but then there's a special allocation for rural bridges, the rural road network, and that's underprescribed. So the goal of this program is to really set the stage to identify the bridges that would be suitable for bridge replacement. Get them to maybe 40% of design, and then be able to go to the DOT and to the MPO down the hall and ask for engineering and construction money. And ideally, because the NBRC funds construction and engineering, and the DOT funds construction and engineering, that the DOT's money or the MPO's money can be used to match the NBRC's money, so that localities will not have to pay for construction of these bridges. That's in an ideal world. That's was the concept of this as a partnership between the MPO, DOT, and the localities. So anyway, it's a $150,000 ask, $60,000 match being provided by the DOT. And we filed the application, in early April. So we'll hear about that, hopefully in the next month or so. Any questions?
Just curious, I'm thinking, timber bridges going over a creek or whatever, but winter when you're throwing salt, doesn't that heat away at the timber bridges or they're,
I am not an engineering expert,
okay,
but I know they have successfully been deployed in any climate.
okay,
And there have been many examples in the Northeast, particularly where this federal commission has been established. So obviously there are maintenance guidelines to be able to deal with that, but they've been addressed successfully. I will also mention it's not just limited to bridges. This program can fund construction of rest areas, can fund construction of bus shelters, can fund construction of airport terminals. Just as long as those places use timber products significantly.
This is specific to automobile traffic bridges, not trail bridges. Or
Can be trail bridges as well. Anything that moves things or people.
You've identified 20 targets throughout those qualified counties.
So as part of our solicitation, the task of identifying the most appropriate ones will fall to the consulting agency. But we've taken a preliminary look at the list and condition of bridges. So our basic rubric is volume of traffic that a bridge handles, so lower than, I don't know, 200 vehicles a day or whatever that number is. Length of span, so whatever maximum length of span. And those are really and condition of the bridge. So we'll focus on bridges that fit the criteria and are in need to be replaced. Will be our priority.
So all existing bridges then, right now.
Yes, so we're looking at, the big list is about 80 bridges that would be potentially be eligible. We want to narrow that down to about 20. To do the concept level designs and then do the full grant package for two.
Hey, Mark, from a circularity, sustainability perspective, end of life of these timber bridges, what happens to that material? Steel, obviously, we know, recycled, infinite.
I don't know. One of the things that I hope that will come out of this is my pivot. One of the things I know that will come out of this grant program, or hope will, is growing the industry for this kind of wood product in New York. After having reached out to the New York State forest producers, whatever industry group, John Bartow, who's their executive director, he let me know that there's no business that's actually producing this kind of timber in New York State. We'd have to go out of state to Vermont or New Hampshire to Maine to get it. But if it starts looking like there's a viable market locally for this type of material, it could incentivize a local producer to start getting into this. And we've also reached out to this, wouldn't call it a think tank, an innovation lab at SUNY ESF, who focuses on laminated timber and other technologies, to advise us as we develop the solicitation for this grant.
But is it made from virgin timber or is it made from recovered wood products?
So one of the, not recovered.
Okay, so it's virgin timber.
Right, and you get brownie points if you source your material locally, so it comes from
Got it.
local stock.
Right.
What type of roads are these bridges on?
They could be on local roads, we're
Town
targeting
road,
town roads,
high road,
county roads,
a park?
parks. One of the things that Jason pointed out was that ownership of these bridges on the local road system is varied. Some counties own all their local roads, others, like in Saratoga County, it's a mix of county folks and local folks. So that'll be part of the work, is to identify who's the owner of the bridge and how we can work with them to bring them into this project.
I apologize. I gotta run to the airport.
Light to catch.
I understand that parking is at a premium at the moment.
It
The
is.
garage is crazy. I'm gonna have to hunt for a park.
Wow, good luck, safe flight.
So, thank you.
Yep.
Good trip with them.
And Mark, for narrowing down the number of bridges from 80 to about 20, what kind of metrics can be used for? Is it like most need or maybe easier managed, like where there's issues where it's like, we know who owns it, like, is that a priority? So I guess,
Well, the main three factors are level of use, so average daily trips over the bridge, so the lower the better. Length of span, shorter the better, and condition of bridge, more severely, more in need of being replaced would put you higher on the list. But we're gonna be working with our consultants and other partners like the folks at ESF to help us narrow that rubric so we can get the best list possible.
So no action for local government partners?
No,
You gotta,
I'll come back for action to accept the grant if we are awarded.
And so the grant applications are due in 2 days, so this is for next year's?
This is for, so they have rolling applications, so they have the spring round and then the fall round. So they would announce these awards probably in June or July. And I would anticipate contracts would be ready in October, in that timeline. So we'd be ready to issue an RFP probably Q4 this year if we're awarded.
very good. Any other questions? Okay, no, vote needed there. So we'll move on to memo 2608, related to, housing and transportation opportunities study.
Yes, so one of the things that we've started to work on, funded by the transportation folks down the hall, is housing. And they've always been very good at making the connection between land use and transportation. I mean, they're two sides of the same coin. But we don't do a really good job at being proactive about that kind of consideration in this region. So all the studies that Madison and we've been working on over here, taking a look at housing, our affordability analysis, we have done demographic analyses, we've done a variety of things with housing. This effort will build on that. This also will feed into, and this is another agenda item, a housing workshop that we're partnering with folks from HUD and the Transportation Council to put on, that we're aiming for the fall. That'll bring together some stakeholders to talk about what the common challenges are for housing in the region and what some of the potential solutions are for those for addressing housing issues in the region. So that we're planning that as a day-long workshop, and then this project would be the follow-up for that. So that workshop will provide the preliminary input for what will be a capital region housing and transportation opportunity study. And that will really look at communities and the connection or lack thereof between our transportation network and our housing. One of the things that we discovered in our preliminary analysis of, we took a look at the 5 fastest growing communities in each county and called them up, whoever's in charge of development review. And we asked them a couple questions, particularly related to large housing developments. And so of the communities that got back to us, of the 20 or so that got back to us and we talked to, only one of those communities had a zoning district that allowed large multifamily. And every other development for large multifamily in those areas is done either by special use permit or by PDD. And that is the antithesis of strategic planning and coordination with our transit system. And then the folks at CDTA get a call and say, can you run a bus line out here? And so that planning is sort of reversed. What I also hope to get out of this plan is what our other peer regions in upstate New York have, and this is Western New York, the Finger Lakes area and the Syracuse area, have all done a regional housing market analysis. So we haven't done a regional market housing analysis in this region to identify what the lowest hanging fruit of intervention we would need specific to our housing market that would help us to either increase the supply or increase affordability of housing in the region. So hopefully this will also establish that baseline. So I submitted an application for what used to be called member items to Senator Schumer and Gillibrand. And we'll see if it gets funded. It would be directed to a HUD program that focuses on that focuses on these kind of things. Luckily, the HUD program would not require any match. Which is good, and the ask would be $750,000. And we had great support from a variety of partners across the region for the application.
Do you have a sense of the likelihood of this? Just.
I mean, I can't imagine a better project to fund than this.
Yeah.
But I don't have a good sense of the competition.
Anybody have any questions? No? Nothing, Fran said, you know, the federal administration has talked about transit-oriented development, you know, which is supportive of good planning, so that's good. All right, if there's no other questions, we'll move on to memo 2609, the regional address integration and census readiness initiative.
So never too early to think about the decennial census. One of the chronic issues that we experience in upstate New York is, well, people think it's an undercount of our population. And as we know, our population determines our representation in Washington, DC, and it also determines federal formula funding allocations to our state. And we really have a scattershot approach into identifying addresses to receive a census mailer every 10 years. So some counties and cities take this activity seriously, and others ignore it and just accept what the census gives them. And we're role mapped into the process as a regional planning commission to oversee the local process to make sure the list that we approve for the census has the most addresses possible. So the process is basically the census sends you a list of the addresses that they think you have in the region, and then there's a process by which you can compare it to other lists. So this project would be in partnership with all the other regional planning commissions in upstate New York. And we would award them subcontracts to work with their counties to do a much better job at identifying these records. We have a methodology that would take a look at all of the potential lists for addresses, including the E911 file, USPS files, the Tiger line file data set, and most importantly, would spit out addresses in a format that's are acceptable to the census. One of the trip ups of a lot of this work is, while you may have a great list, if the format of your address is not exactly right, the census will reject it. And that has left a lot of addresses on the table. So we estimate that this project, if awarded and if successful, would result in a 0.5% increase in the number of addresses counted in the 45 area study area that this would cover, would translate into about $205 million more in formula funding to those 45 counties. And that's just a 0.5%. So I think this is a strong project. It is applied to the DOS Local Government Efficiency Grant Program, which is the grant program that I'm still trying to get $131,000 from. But this is structured in a similar way as our Clean Energy Communities Program and Climate Smart Communities Program, with Todd's model of subcontractors and having the match provided by a discount to the subcontractor's rate. So again, in my estimation, this is our contribution to a match for this project would be de minimis. But it's a great opportunity for all the regional planning councils to work together. I think it's probably the first grant application that we've all worked together on. And we hope that it's awarded.
How many are there in the state?
So there are about 6 that are active. And we meet we're meeting tomorrow. We have a state organization, the National New York State Association of Regional Planning Councils. And through that organization, this project idea came about.
So this will be, the work will be completed by CDRPC staff or consultants?
So it would be similar to how we do the clean energy climate smart programs. We would oversee the statewide effort. We would take a portion of it for our staff time to coordinate our counties,
And they do.
and then we'd sub-award it out to the other regional planning commissions to coordinate with their counties.
Okay. And the housing and transportation opportunity study, was that staff driven or was that?
That would probably be consulted.
Anybody have any other questions? Yep, we'll move on to memo 2610, the housing and transportation group technical assistance.
Sure, this is the thing I mentioned that would feed into the housing opportunity study. We're working on a workshop with the Transportation Council and folks that are funded through HUD to do some of this preliminary housing conversation in the region. We have identified fall. We don't have a save the date yet. We're working on a venue and a save the date, but once we have that, we'll share it around. We're looking for a good mix of allied partners, as elected officials and advocacy organizations to start this conversation. One of the interesting things about working with the HUD folks is that they're working all around the country with different models of governance and with different housing issues. So they're working, in Des Moines, Honolulu, like all over the place. And our housing challenges, so they're working with a regional organization that has, I don't know, 15 million people, and they only have to work with five levels of municipal government. So our situation here, where we have 80 plus units of government in our 4 counties, makes the conversation and where we started a bit different. So we're trying to really find the way that will have, allow us to have a productive conversation with a variety of stakeholders that addresses our particular challenges in the region, given our governmental structure. So we had the conversation yesterday with the group. We refined the scope of the project, and right now we're at the phase where we're going to be sharing it with some strategic partners to get their feedback on what will create the most meaningful conversation and input session for the workshop. Any questions?
Board, how many people?
So, we're looking at somewhere between 30 and 50. We don't want it to be too large, but we also wanted to have, an opportunity to present at the group, but also for the group members to come together in small group sessions to really suss out those ideas.
No further questions on that. We'll move to the United Way of the Greater Capital Region Digital Inclusion Initiative.
Right, so an old adage of mine is never leave money on the table. I might not be able to claim that one, but we were awarded a grant from the Department of State to work on broadband. You remember we did all that work with the grant areas and the addresses and the served and unserved. And that did help, ISPs identify particular service areas, and is actually translating now into construction projects. But we had $100,000 left over. And so I was thinking, well, what can we do with $100,000? So I was making some phone calls around, and I learned about this program that was managed in partnership with United Way that provided better access for people to get access to the internet. So I reached out to them, and we had a conversation, and I asked them to develop a proposal for me that would help us spend the rest of the money. Thankfully, the scope of work for the grant is very broad. So we were able to do an internal budget modification to fund this work. And essentially the work would be to provide some targeted investments in equipment and human resources to help people get better access to the internet. So the United Way would be a subrecipient of the grant award. They will work with libraries within the counties of Rensselaer, Saratoga, and Schenectady to help them purchase equipment. This includes hotspots and Chromebooks. And we would also provide a stipend for some of their staff to work with people who are not digitally literate to get them up to speed on these things. The lion's share of the funds will be used to buy equipment, the hotspots and the Chromebooks. The hotspots people can borrow from the library, they can take home, they can, if they don't have internet, they can use the hotspot for free. And so we hope that this will connect more people to the internet at a lower cost.
Interesting. How long do they get to use the hotspot for?
I think it's a 2 week, so like a book, 2 weeks.
Okay.
And just a note anecdotally, during the census memo on this, in Albany, when the last decennial census occurred, the library loaned out these hotspots, which lent to a greater count of people in the city of Albany. So it was a wonderful initiative.
The money flowing through planning commission, going straight to them.
It's, so again, this is where our fund balance comes in, so we'll give a payment to the United Way, and then they'll coordinate with the libraries to purchase the equipment. The subcontract is structured in a milestone payment process. So the first payment to the subrecipient, United Way, would be basically for the purchase of the equipment, and then the last payment will be once they provide all the reconciliation materials.
You don't need any approvals to contract and pay with United Way?
I did need approvals, but you guys provided the
We already did.
approval.
Okay, great. Just confirming.
That's.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to the federal funding update. 2612, it looks like.
Yep, so not a lot has changed since our last report, but the good news is our federally funded or federally adjacent funding sources have not been significantly impacted by the federal budget process. But I just wanted to keep you all up to speed on where we are with that process.
Anybody have any questions about any of the federal funding? Seeing none, we'll move on to the staff activity report that was emailed to us prior to the meeting.
Sure.
There's extra copies if people don't have it.
Anybody have any questions in the review, or is there anything that you'd like Mark to provide more detail on?
I'll just point out some of the upcoming, some of my administrative work. So I've been looking at ways to improve and make more efficient our time tracking and billing functions. There are a lot of tools out there now, time tracking and for billing development. So we folks down the hall have been meeting with several companies that provide some of this technology. And whether or not it's going to work out for us remains to be seen. I've already made some improvements to our existing time tracking materials, but we're still kind of like in the 1990s as we rely on spreadsheets and Excel to do all this stuff. So I've been working on making improvements to that, streamline the process and to make it more accurate. And hopefully after this first quarter's billing process, I'll know whether those improvements are sufficient or whether we need to keep pursuing another option. Under our sustainability portfolio, you may have seen the emails about the Land Use Leadership Alliance training program. This is a powerful program, and I know Judy remembers working with PACE. And they're really good. They provide an intensive training program. It's like a 3-day master's degree in planning, is how I would describe it. Targeted at decision makers at the local level. Their program has been tailored to the goals of the sustainability portfolio. Todd, you want to just talk a little bit about the project?
Yeah, I mean, this is something actually that my students, so it's through their solar farm, and they are just looking for ways to better provide support and training for local communities that are facing solar developments and battery storage projects. And there's just a lot of controversy and just need for better understanding. There's a lot of fear about fires related to battery storage. And so, there's a lot of new tools that NYSERDA has been putting together to help communities with different templates and training for the fire folks. And so this is, a way to tie to local municipalities to better get them more knowledge about those particular things. So we just help to promote it and to get communities to participate, but it's for this particular things funded by NYSERDA through their solar farms.
Is it fully sold out or?
It is, I believe so, right? Where I think the last week we heard that they were,
Yeah.
I think it was 40 was the total.
40 was the total.
Yeah.
I think they had like maybe a few spots if there were any last.
Right.
Wanted to jump in, but.
Where are they hosting? Where are they hosting the
In
training?
Saratoga Springs. Hotel,
And do we have a good mix from within our service counties of folks?
Yeah.
That's great, thank you.
Sustainability Portfolio is also hosting a webinar series, which you may have seen, upcoming webinar dates.
Yes.
Yeah, so the first Wednesday of the month, we are holding at noon. We've been holding, our first one was last month. And we had CDTA speak and some local communities speak about transit and tying with local communities, local transit, and put together a series of different topics that are tied to our climate action plan. So this is through our EPA funding. Climate action plan is completed, and now it's just a way of tying that to local initiatives. So this particular one that's coming up first of this coming month will be on the same topic as actually the Lula workshop. So we'll be talking about solar and battery. And we have on our team an extension of our NYSERDA contract, some support from a private consultant who's also been on that contract that's hired a person. This has been going on now for almost 2 years now, that provides direct solar and battery support to local communities. They can, anybody who needs to have help with that, go out and work with you and provide you materials and support. So this is just speaking on that topic, and they'll identify a series of other topics that you should all be getting the notice of what the topics are now through October. We'll be doing those.
And it's important for community, I mean, this underpins the project. It's important for communities to identify where they want this stuff. And there are only certain places where this stuff can go. And by stuff, I mean solar and battery storage. These need to be in some sort of geographical relationship to the high tension lines and three-phase lines, right? And similar to like cannabis regulation, it's not a matter of whether or not you can zone these facilities out. There was actually a case in Greene County, the town of Athens, that basically said that the town needed to issue the permit for a company to build a solar farm because it implemented the state's clean energy goals. So in my knowledge, unprecedented decision that says your local authority for planning and zoning is now bypassed by the state's goals for clean energy policy. So the town, usually these cases would be, the judge would say, town, you need to relook at this and see if you can issue the permit. The court didn't say that. It said you must issue the permit. You cannot deny the permit. And so that tells me and this is all, it's still a moving target, that tells me that the solar and energy developers will have much more of a hand in conversations with local folks. So it's better for local folks to get prepared for where these facilities should be sited, rather than to have to address it through the legal system.
Did they appeal that decision?
I'm not sure if they appealed.
And just to expand on that, there's a utility exemption from local zoning, so it's tied to that idea of these large scale are tied to basically the utility itself. But the kind of stuff that we're hitting on is not just the large scale stuff, so we're trying to help work with communities on everything from rooftop solar to just, their own local backup batteries, because sometimes there's an overreaction perhaps to some of this stuff. I know that there's a moratorium in Clifton Park right now, I think for all batteries. So if someone has or Tesla charger for their EV, can't have one now until new regulations are put in. So it's kind of extreme. There's extremes of scale here, and the large stuff is regulated differently than the small stuff, which is regulated locally.
So I'm thinking the PSC, are they involved in any of this? Because they would like oversee utility companies on what they can do and what they can't do and what they can regulate and where they can put different things. So I'm thinking the PSC may be involved.
Well, initially, I mean, this is a separate office of renewable energy siting that the state established for large scale renewables.
I'm thinking though that the PSC would still have to oversee it all because it's all energy related.
Well, the Office of the Renewable Energy Siting is basically taking that role for renewable energy projects.
Okay, even though we don't know if there's transmission lines that could support it or any of those issues. I'm thinking, is there real planning getting involved in this or just, here you go, folks, this is what you have to do in your town?
Well, the utility companies, or the solar developers, battery storage developers, they're doing the planning. We're trying to help the localities match their level of planning so they're not unprepared.
Yeah,
Yeah, my
So
curious.
the interesting thing is the guidance for the municipalities coming out in NYSERDA, which has to implement the state's clean energy plan. So we have right now, I think, 7 or 8 municipalities in Saratoga County under moratorium and much more looking at it. So I think this is great resource for the municipalities because there just isn't much assistance out there not tied to the industry, right? So, and it's a concern expressed by a lot of the towns in Saratoga County.
And all utilities will have released maps that show the potential capacity at substations and through their network. They're difficult though to interpret for planning purposes because of some of the things that have happened over time where solar developers have essentially put in projects in the queue, but there's not a guarantee that those projects are going to get through. So how much capacity is really in those substations? I mean, it is a tricky thing, and we're caught in a weird position because we're trying to help localities. All of the stuff we've done all along has been all about helping them and empowering them. This other ORES thing is a tricky thing that comes on top of the kind of, stuff we've done with unified solar permit and with helping with local decision making. And so it complicates things for us because we're not taking a stance on this. We're just trying to be there for the community. So it's, and there's all these other complications with you follow the Times Union at all. There's an article this week about a lot of these projects in the queue now that have even been approved. They're at their approval stage, trying to renegotiate especially the large scale ones that they're trying to renegotiate what they agreed to for cost from the state. Because now the costs of everything have escalated with steel and tariffs and other kinds of things. And they think a lot of these projects are ultimately not even going to get built in the current economic situation.
Or need to be built bigger, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, when you look at ORES, you follow the issue in Washington County across the state, the impact on farmland, I mean, these things weren't thought about when ORES was developed.
And there was no boom in AI, which we all of a sudden have. And now we have data centers that want to swallow up available capacity. So there's all kinds of discussions at all levels of government about how those developers contribute to their needs. Do they build their own power or do they get to claim the power that's there and then that takes away from the consumer and is there enough? And that raises all other issues about whether natural gas, the decommissioning of natural gas, which doesn't sound like a wise idea. It seems like, well, we need to have all the above as an option, which now the governor is going out and talking about. And that was our stance in our climate action plan. We took that interestingly before the governor started too. So kind of a stance, we said, no, this makes more sense to not start to talk about prohibitions and bans. And now the governor's going out saying the same thing and making a plea to the legislature to amend the goals of the CLCPA to back off on some of the aggressiveness of it. So stay tuned. There's going to be a lot. I mean, we're going to get a lot going on with this topic.
And another thing that's in the hopper that Todd and team are working on is a resource that shows battery storage facilities in the region. So it'll be eye-opening for folks to see.
Yep. I think this is great because I mean, at the county department, that's one thing we struggle with, right? There's just not unbiased information to provide to municipalities on this issue, right? And they're struggling. We have a lot of towns struggling with this issue.
Yeah. So there's a lot of fear about fires that are at this, I mean, there's been a series of improvements to the way they do them and they have them in their own encasing so that they're pretty contained and there's not really a lot you can do with it anyway, just let it sort itself out. So they're training for fire departments now and there's requirements that battery developers have to have someone on call to be able to respond. So trying to come up with ways to further elaborate on how you can, well, so you understand, that communities can understand and not just react by fear.
Well, with the public utility managers and ORES, I mean, most local boards on these large facilities are pulled totally out of the process, which are not. Some of them aren't even aware of that.
For the solar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, housing, fixing infrastructure, electrification, sounds like the regional planning commission is solving a lot of the big problems that are talked about in local government, so. Sounds like you're very busy.
Solving is a big word. We're engaged in.
Providing biased information and well-researched information, and that's a great role for the commission. Art, do you have anything else?
Yeah, just a couple other updates. We just want a reminder, we are Tech Assist program, free technical assistance for planning, zoning, transportation related projects. We're currently working to develop projects to support Schenectady County and the hazard mitigation plan update. And Albany County, as they update their comprehensive plan for the first time in 50+ years. I wanted to also mention that we're working, we have done almost completed an economic impact analysis for Empire State University. We continue to work with the Port of Albany on their economic impact analysis. And we are, what was I gonna say? In my mind, before I started speaking, I had it all. But one important staff update is that Kate Maynard, our Director of Economic Development and Planning, has accepted a position to become the next Commissioner of Planning for Schenectady County.
Wow.
Great move for her. Well, we do have a job vacancy. Congratulations, Gary, and Schenectady members. Great hire.
Appreciate the congratulations and we're very sorry.
You're training great people on that.
Yeah, so we will have an opening, but we do appreciate all the work that Kate has done to transform the economic development portfolio, absorb the Northern Border Regional Commission and expand our foreign trade zone. And we continue, just as an update, continue to work with Regeneron as they are looking into establishing a foreign trade zone. That's it. And then thank you to the staff. They do the work, make us look
Yeah.
good.
Mark, how long has Kate been here?
He started a month after I did. 7 years. I've been here since 19, 7 years.
Thank you all. We'll call the meeting to close.
Yep.
Next meeting is June 17th, 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Thank you.